guys. Like Pastor Jeff said, my name is Sam. I am 25. I just graduated from Purdue to be a teacher. And so just like Aaron, I'm going to share a little bit of my testimony and what God has brought me out of. I'm the oldest of 5 girls. I have 4 younger sisters. I know, holy crap, Dad, what were you thinking? He thinks the same thing and still does think the same thing at sometimes. But growing up, I was always the tomboy of the bunch, I guess that you could say. I got in fights, I spit, I even wore boys' clothing, and I just wanted to rough it up with the guys. I wanted to play football with the guys, and my dad really, really liked that. And so I got put in sports when I was younger, at a really young age, and I started playing soccer when I was about 4. And soccer was like our bonding thing. It was the one thing that my dad and I could connect on because he, played sports all through college and loved it. And so he loved that he could fill into my life and spill into my life and teach me and train me and coach me. And he was the dad that was always running up and down the sidelines with me, yelling at me more than my coach was, encouraging me more than my coach was, because he was my number 1 fan the whole time. And throughout all of the years that I played soccer, he was my number 1 fan. But my dad and I didn't always have the best relationship. We are very much the same person. We are very stubborn. We like to have the last word, and we don't give up without a fight. And so we butted heads a lot. And when I was 12, 13, it started to get abusive. And it started out as just, verbal abuse. But then it turned into more. It turned into physical abuse, and not just on his end. We'd get in fights. We'd get in, hitting matches. And because we are the same person, because we were very much alike, neither one of us wanted to back down from a fight. And it always got to the point where my dad ended up scaring me. He turned into a man who I didn't know. He turned into a man that wasn't my dad. And so I'd run, I'd lock myself in the room. A lot of times I would run away from home. And I didn't understand, I didn't comprehend how a man who was programmed to love me could hurt me like that. I didn't get it. I didn't understand how he could look at me every day and still do that. And so I had a lot of anger, and I had a lot of bitterness towards him, just like Aaron talked about. I had a lot of unforgiveness towards him. But I didn't know what to do with this anger. And so I started drinking. I started doing drugs. I started doing something, anything that I could find to hide all of that pain, to hide everything that I was feeling. Because the pain was too much that I had to do something to numb it. Because if I just sat in it, then just like Aaron talked about, thoughts of suicide would come in. Because sometimes it hurts. And it hurts a lot, and you don't know what to do with it. And so that's at the point I was, and I didn't want to deal with it. And so I didn't. I just used drugs and alcohol to take it all away. And I used soccer also. I put a lot of my identity in soccer because soccer, I could get all of my anger out. Soccer, I could get all of my aggression out. Soccer. And even though all of that had happened with my dad, soccer was the one thing that we could still talk about. Even when I went home after school, after practice, and I didn't want to talk to my dad, I didn't want to look at him, he would still say, "Sam, how was practice today? Sam, how'd it go?" And he still came to every game. And so I pushed myself to be the best athlete that I could, because that was the one thing that was holding on to my relationship with my dad was soccer. And so I put everything I had into soccer. And I tried to start getting my life back together my senior year of high school and tried following the Lord the best that I knew how. And I decided to actually go and play college ball my freshman year and I went down to Evansville. I moved 4 hours away, ended up playing soccer down there. It started out really, really well, and I was getting a lot of playing time, but the coach wasn't the coach that I met at the tryouts, and she gave me a lot of empty promises, and I started trying to perform for her and trying to perform for my teammates and trying to perform for even the parents of my teammates in the stands, because I wanted to prove that I deserved to be out there. I wanted to prove that I really I wasn't proving anything but myself, and trying to hold on to that relationship with my dad that whole time. It wasn't really about the players. It really wasn't about the coaches, about the parents. It was about me being scared that if I lost soccer, then I'd lose my dad too. And about halfway through the season, I blew out my knee. Completely tore my ACL, MCL, all of it, meniscus. And I had never dealt with this stuff with my dad. And so at that point in my life, it felt like my whole world had fallen apart. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. And I was trying to still follow the Lord the best way that I knew how. And so I didn't want to go back into drinking. I didn't want to go back into drugs. And so without even realizing what I was doing, I developed an eating disorder. And I stopped eating. I'd work out 2 or 3 times a day, and I wouldn't eat. And I took a lot of things that hurt my body and basically shut my body down. And it got to the point where I ended up transferring schools, and I thought that I was going to move back home and go to Purdue and play soccer, because this whole time when I was having this eating disorder, I didn't see what I was doing. I didn't see what was happening to myself. I just saw in the moment this one thing, this diet, the way that I eat, this one part of my life I can control. I can't control anything with my dad. I can't control my feelings. I can't control my emotions. I can't control the pain. But this one thing I can control. And so I held on to it, and I fought with it with everything that I had. And even though I had people and friends and family, looking at me and saying, "Sam, you're dying. Sam, you're killing yourself." I said, "No, I'm not. I got this. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm fine." And I believed that. But the truth of it, I wasn't. And before, I ended up having a dream. And this was before I even came to Whitehorse, before I even knew that Holy Spirit existed, before I even knew that the Lord could speak to you in dreams. The Lord gave me a dream. And I was in this huge room. And what I know now, I think it was probably the throne room of God. And there's this huge figure, this huge man sitting at the far end of it. And I could just see his feet and maybe just his big toe. Like, his big toe was huge. And that sounds really weird to say, but I can't even fathom how big this man's toe was. And I think that it was God. That's my perception, that it was the Lord, that I was sitting in his presence. And I was, at this far end of it. And in the dream, I was trying to, walk towards him. But each time I took a step, a black figure would come up and wrap around my leg, or a black figure would come up and wrap around my shoulders or my arm or my head, and they just kept coming up the farther that I got and the closer that I got towards the Lord, until eventually they were covering me, and they took me and sunk me into the ground. And that sounds really scary and depressing, but I woke up that morning, and for the first time I looked in the mirror and I said, the scales were lifted off of my eyes. The veil was lifted off of my eyes, and I looked in the mirror and said, "Wow, I'm sick and I need help." And the thing that I didn't know then, that same night, the night before, I got in a really bad fight with my mom and with my dad, because I was living at home at the time. And when I was at home, I just secluded myself in my room, and I'd stare at a wall, because I was just depressed. I was here physically, but emotionally I was not. You could look at me and I looked like a zombie. And, they came into my room and they said, "Sam, why don't you come downstairs? Why don't you come hang out with us? Why don't you come hang out with your family? Do you really hate being here so much that you don't want to come?" And I remember that all of that anger and all of that stuff with my dad just boiled up, and I looked at him and I said, yeah, Dad, I do. I really hate it here because I can't forget what you did to me. And I remember looking at my mom and I said, and you just sat there and you let it happen the whole time. And I told him, I yelled at him, I told him to get out of my room, and it ended kind of bad. But that night I got really, really sick. And I ended up, spending the night in the bathroom, and I was throwing up blood. And I don't say all that to gross you out, but just, it was bad. And my mom heard me and tried to come in and comfort me. And, I yelled at her and told her to get out, to go away, I don't need your help. And she went back into her room, and she nudged my dad, and she said, Jeff, we got to do something. We got to do something. We're losing her. My dad said, she doesn't want our help. What can we do? And so my mom got down on the edge of the bed. She prayed and she said, Lord, I know that she's your daughter. I know that she is yours, but I'm not ready to lose her yet. To do something in her to wake her up. And that night I had that dream. And so the next morning I woke up, and it was like the scales were lifted off of my eyes. And for the first time, like I said, I saw that I was sick. And so I remember calling my mom the next day and saying, Mom, okay, I need help. I need to get into a clinic. I need to get in somewhere. I need help. And, just like Aaron said, that's the first step. The first step is seeing that you need help and reaching out to someone and saying, I can't do this on my own. And Aaron talked about the Lord, but sometimes that's even in a different way. Sometimes you have to reach out to a counselor. Sometimes you have to reach out to a doctor. There are earthly people that the Lord has put on this place to help you. And in my circumstance, in my situation, it was a clinic, and I had to reach out and say, I need help. I can't do this. I don't know how to get better. I need help. And so I ended up having to drop out of college for a semester. And I was in treatment for 5 months about, and I'd go there every day, and it was a really rigorous program that I went through. And I was the only person in the program that had been there for the first time. All of the girls that I was in there with, it was their third or fourth or fifth time being in the program. And I remember looking at them, I remember saying, I don't want this. I can't come back to this. I got to lay this down this time, because I looked at them and I saw them. They were in bondage and they were trapped, and that's all they thought about was this eating disorder that consumed them. That's all they talked about. And I remember just sitting there day after day. I can't do this. I got to get out of it. I got to do this. And whatever it takes, I got to do this. I have to get out because I can't come back to this again. And so I got out of treatment, but even after I was out of treatment, I still struggled with it, and it was still a process, and it was still, something that I thought about. And it wasn't until I came here to a women's conference in 2012. I had come in late because I had soccer practice, and I just kind of slid into the seats, and it was my first conference here at Whitehorse. And I came in not really expecting anything, but deep inside I wanted something to happen. I was trying not to put expectations on what was going to happen and trying not to think about it, but deep inside I was really hurting because I hadn't dealt with this stuff with my dad. And so deep inside I was crying out, God, you have to move tonight. God, you have to do something tonight in me. And so Pastor Gary actually ended up giving an altar call, and he was preaching. And the altar call was, if you're ready to stop eating at the table of the world, then this altar call is for you. So I remember going up there, and my feet put me up there before I could even realize what was happening. I didn't want to go up, but I knew that I had to. And before I even realized it, I was up there on the line, and I was closing my eyes. And I was kind of, doing the half-closed eyes where you're kind of peeking still and watching everyone around you. And I watched as both Pastor Jeff and Pastor Gary were up here on the platform, and then they were released, and they went around and started praying for people. And I was trying not to think about it, so I just closed my eyes, and I was like, okay, Lord, just do something. Do something, do something, do something. And I can't tell you which pastor it was. I just know one of them was making their way down the line towards me. And they put their hands on my cheeks right here, and as soon as they put their hands on my cheeks, I fell out in the Spirit. And I'd never done that before, but at the time I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know what it was, but I had a vision when I was out in the Spirit. And the Lord showed me, it was kind of like a slow-mo of a young woman, and it started at her feet, and it, just kind of slowly went up her body, and she was wearing a long white gown, and she had like tan skin and freckles all over her nose, and her hair was long and brown and wavy, and she was wearing this crown of flowers. And at first I didn't recognize it, and I was like, God, why are you showing me this person that I don't know who it is? Why are you showing me this random girl? And then God said, that's you, Tam. And I remember looking at that girl, and she was the most beautiful thing that I'd ever seen. And the whole time God was sitting there, and he's saying to me, that's you. That's how I look at you. And so I got up, and I can tell you, honestly, from that day, I have not struggled with eating disorder. I haven't even struggled with the thought of it. And sometimes people say, oh yeah, no, I don't struggle with that anymore. No, I really don't struggle with that anymore. If you know me, I can eat. And I eat and I put it away, and I'm not ashamed to eat because I like food and I like to eat and I'm hungry. And if you give me junk food, I'm going to eat junk food. And, it's not, God doesn't have to do something. If he's going to come in and do it, he's going to come in and do it all, and he's going to wipe it all away so that when you look back at it, there's no residue of what was there. But the even cooler part of my testimony is that the Lord just didn't stop with just me. Because I got my healing, that opened my eyes to be able to talk to my dad. And, say, Dad, I'm sorry for what happened, I'm sorry for what I said. And that opened the door for him to then say, Sam, I'm sorry too. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm sorry that we walked through all of this. And I got to speak to him about the Lord. And I got to invite him here to church. And when I first started inviting him to church, they were like, no, this place is crazy. This place is nuts. People fall down. People are running around. People are shouting. People are yelling. No, I'm not coming back here. This place is nuts. But there was something here that they wanted. And even more than that, they saw that I had changed. And they saw that there was something in me that this place had given me. There was something in me that I got here from Holy Spirit, and they wanted that. And so it opened up the door, and they started asking questions, and they ended up coming, my family ended up coming on a Sunday morning, and it was actually Easter Sunday. And I remember I'd been praying for my dad, to get saved, and just for the Lord to open up an opportunity for him to get saved. And Pastor Jeff gave an altar call at the end of service. If you don't know the Lord, if you want to come up here and give him your life today, today's your day. And I remember standing there, my hands and looking over at him, like, come on, Dad, go. And I was hoping, that he was going to go up on his own. And then I heard Holy Spirit say, you need to ask him. And I turned over to him. And I was crying, and I had tears running down my eyes, and I just looked at him in the eyes. And before I could even get the words out, before I could even say, Dad, do you want to go up there? Do you want to go give your life to the Lord? He just looked at me crying and said, yeah, babe, I do. So I got to walk up here, holding his hand, and we got to stand here, and I got to pray with Pastor Gary as he led my dad to the Lord. And not only that, but then I got to lead all 4 of my sisters to the Lord, because just like the Lord did before, he's not a part-time God. He's not a part-time God. If you ask him to do something, if you give him the platform to move in your life, then he's going to move, and he's not just going to do it halfway. He's going to do it all the way.